In Jesus' day, law emanated from the religious establishment, not Congress or Parliament. Chapter 13 of Leviticus explains Jewish religious law regarding leprosy. Now, leprosy was a terrible disease. It invoked the mass fear of COVID during periods of high hospitalization. The diagnosis was one pronounced by the priest, and you were considered unclean, unfit for society. It was the equivalent of a diagnosis of AIDS in the 1980s, where polite society didn't even want to touch you, and most just stood by and whispered about how you contracted the disease. Leprosy starts small, but progresses into a painful, ugly, degenerative demise ending in death. The hair falls from the head and eyebrows. The nails loosen, decay, and drop off. Joint after joint of the fingers and toes shrink up and slowly fall away. The gums absorb and the teeth disappear. The nose, the eyes, the tongue, and the palate are slowly consumed. Nerve endings cease to function, and the body becomes dead to pain, and finally the victim dies. Jewish law dictated that lepers were not to defile anyone else with their uncleanliness. Lepers had to tear their clothes, uncover their heads, cover the lower half of their faces. Whenever they came near anyone, they had to yell, "Unclean, unclean." They had to live alone outside the village, outside the camp, quarantined from their family for life. Now, tearing your clothes and uncovering your head were signs of grief and mourning for the dead. The leper was considered the walking dead. They had no hope for anything other than death. Covering your face at the lip was a sign of shame. As a practical matter, however, these laws gave both visual and auditory warning to the rest of society that a contagious person was nearing. Besides, the isolation and masking slowed the spread of this bacteria-associated contagion. In our story, Jesus is going to Jerusalem. He is between Samaria and Galilee in an unnamed village. 10 leprous men, in accordance with the law, stood off a distance and called out Jesus' name, begging him to heal them. Now, these are the isolated, those considered unclean by society, the dregs of society. This is the equivalent of meeting a COVID coughing homeless person who wants your help while they are still dirty, smelly, and contagious. Now, let's remember that there is no medical cure for leprosy at this point. In response to their cries, though, Jesus tells them to go show themselves to the priests. In essence, he's telling them that they are healed and to obey Jewish law by getting themselves inspected by the priest. At this point, the men are still marked, but they obey Jesus. And somewhere on their way to see the priest, they are cleansed. One of them, when he saw that he had been healed, turns back and glorifies God in a loud voice, and he falls on his face at Jesus' feet, giving thanks. Imagine being reprieved from a death sentence, a horrible death sentence. Jesus notes that the grateful man that came back was a Samaritan, implying that the others were Jewish. Now, Samaritans were thought of by Jews to be mongrels, mixed breed Jews that were on a lower rung of the social hierarchy. This man was, under normal circumstances, thought to be less, and with leprosy, he was the least of the less. So society would not expect this foreigner to act with the culture and manners of a Jewish person. Noting his ethnicity as a play on irony, Jesus asks, "Didn't I cleanse 10? And where are the other 9? In a sense, the 9 were doing what Jesus had commanded them to do, go to the priest. But my grandmother would have called them an ungrateful cuss. The 9 Jewish lepers showed no gratitude. Only a foreigner without knowledge of the Jewish traditions, only that foreigner showed the gratitude that you would expect in Jewish society. Jesus commands this one grateful leper to rise, go your way, your faith has made you well. This lesson prepares the gospel to be proclaimed and accepted by Gentiles while spurned by God's chosen people. These 9 ungrateful recipients of God's grace are emblematic of Israel, while the one grateful Gentile is a prototype of the many Gentiles who will believe and will praise God. It taught the disciples and modern Christians that we don't do this work for adulation and glory, but to point souls to Jesus. That's the lesson for this week. Have a great week. Bye.